This is going to be an interesting one, and one that I love having conversations with you about. What are your thoughts on communism, and what do we do about it?
I mean, do you want to know my real thoughts or like my public thoughts?
This is unfiltered, man. This is
man.
This is whatever you wish to say.
Oh, I'm gonna get in so much trouble if this ever gets out.
Dude, this is for Naked A, for Pete's sake.
Yeah. My thoughts on communism. It is Islam 2.0. It is twice as dumb, twice as violent, and twice as based in fantasy world. And I mean, you can argue with these people until you're blue in the face. You can even argue with them on their own terms, and it's like they're religious zealots. They just can't see any other way than their own. And it makes me think we need another Pinochet. I think, one to the neck in a football or in a soccer stadium is too nice. I think they should at least be put to work for once in their lives before they get executed, because they're just a detriment to society. I don't know if if there was a new nation that could be built, that constitution should have in it that communism is punishable by death, because that is really the only way you can keep it from getting into your mainstream and infecting your best and your brightest. Because it would be unfair of me to say every communist is an idiot. No, I'm pretty sure some of these guys are very intelligent. In fact, listening to some of them debate, some of them are very intelligent. But they've been infected with this idea that you can deny people their human nature, and that you can have this utopia without any sort of law to help out and keep the peace, and without anybody that's going to be pissed off that you're taking their pre-existing property and redistributing it. And I think once you deny basic human nature in your argument, there's just no talking to you. You need to become airlifted shark food. I think that it's another religion, and it's the worst one of all.
Communism, I dare say, is very much a cult of death, because at the end of the day, how is communism enforced? By the sword, or in their case, by the bullet. Obviously nobody likes Adolf Hitler or the Nazis, but reading up on history, as I have been recently, I come to find out that the reason why Hitler hated the Jews so much specifically was that Germany, in its time of economic crisis, was seeing an influx of Eastern European communist Jews attempting to stage multiple revolutions against the government and barely being held off every single time. It was so bad that they had their own party, the Nazi Party, the National Bolshevik Party. So what was Hitler's response to this, as he was rising in fame? The National Socialist Party, the Nazi Party, saying, hey, we're not going to have anything to do with you dirty communists. You're destructive, you're violent. You use the media and newspapers to smear us German nationalists. Isn't that kind of crazy? This is I know the alt-right's probably jerking themselves off just listening to this. But no, hashtag not all Jews. I'm tired of this whole Jewish question thing, but I'm not going to act like it doesn't have some historical basis. But yeah, communism is a violent, I'd like to think, cult, and it will never try to institute itself peacefully once its numbers are great enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, it works a lot like Islam. Yeah, once their numbers are big enough, they start going off the handle too.
I know, it's crazy.
I just think that, and I mean, I do not like them. I mean, if it were up to me, there would be a purge tomorrow. Some people are like, thank God it's not up to you. Whatever. The world would be better for it, I think. And, but disregarding that, I would love to have them openly debate a high-profile person that disagrees with communism, just so that you can have their ideas out in the open, and maybe communists that are communists because their friends are, their Marxist professor told them to be, or something, but they're just impressionable young people. They can hear how stupid these ideas are out in the open, and they can hear one of their paladins just get fucking ass fucked, by a capitalist, and just like, oh, well, this doesn't, or even a biologist,
Well, yeah, it's crazy, like how the Soviets just denied human nature, and they thought that they could socially reconstruct man. Stalin had his own vision for the Soviet man. It got so bad that there was a pseudoscience called Lysenkoism.
Yep.
And Negative did a video on this. I'll link in the description, I suppose. But yeah, communism denies biology. It denies social science. It denies basic human nature or sociology. And when it realizes that it loses the practical argument, it becomes subversive, and then when its numbers get big enough, violent. Antifa is the perfect example of this, and they may be a bunch of wimps, but they terrify me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because what's the scariest thing about Antifa is they can do this with almost impunity. Because most of these guys are rich white kids from the suburbs, and they've been convinced by their dumbass professors to do this shit. And since they're all blacked out and whatnot,
black bloc tactics.
Yeah, they get away with it, and even when they do it in plain sight, or somebody has video footage of it, the police are very slow to get them. And I think it's because liberal cities, Antifa, their agitators, and their police force are working hand in hand. Call it conspiratorial if you like, but they just don't get prosecuted the same. They put out these public statements like at Berkeley. Do not have weapons, bats, knives, anything like that. If you do, we're gonna arrest you. But who do they disarm? The right wingers.
They disarm the Proud Boys. They disarm the Trump boys. They disarm the alt right. They disarm the Kekistanis. But Antifa, yeah, they're given
right in.
They're given an absolute impunity on violence. Now, this last time, after the third battle of Berkeley, the following free speech rally, thank God Antifa stayed behind police lines. But it seems like communism just doesn't know when to quit, and when it loses the argument, brandishes the sword.
And the worst part about it is they're all like little fucking cucks, and they don't fight unless it's 20 on 1.
Yeah.
And even then, half the time they're like afraid to go in.
They're basically what my dad said, the difference between coyotes and wolves. Coyotes are a bunch of little chickens, insert expletive here. But when there's enough of them, then they'll gang up on you. Wolves, they don't give a crap. They got nothing to lose. They'll take you one-on-one. They'll take you 1-on-5.
Yeah.
Antifa is coyotes. Strength in numbers, but on their own, they are wimps.
Yeah, and that's going to be the worst part, is if America falls because of Antifa and Islam and all that, I'm going to have these videos of Antifa getting their shit pushed in, archived, and just looking at the size differential between the right-wingers and them, and just like, how the fuck did this happen? And, their tool is political correctness, and it's a brutal tool. And I'm just not sure if we caught it in time. I think maybe the 80s this should have been happening, but who knows? Who knows if it's too late?
Well, even Yuri Bezmenov himself said, when asked over 30 years ago, he said that the demoralization process is actually over-fulfilled in America at this point. You no longer need outside influence in the Soviet Union or these communist nations. Now it's being done by Americans to Americans. You have, I don't know, dare I call it, the university communist industrial complex. What one could call it, it might as well be. Universities are just pumping out more and more of these kids, and as we're finding out, more and more local governments are either giving orders to stand down, or in the case of Berkeley, their mayor is affiliated with Antifa and one of its subsidiaries, BAM, by any means necessary. So we have local governments, and in some cases state governments, in the case of California more than likely, working with these these filthy commies.
I think what Trump is kind of proving here is that a right-wing populist will never be popular enough to do the things that need to be done. And that is root out all of these commies from our local governments, from our state governments, and start putting, curb stomping these people.
Well, even California removed a law of theirs from like the 50s saying that no Communist Party member could run for state office. Yeah. They just removed that recently.
Holy crap.
Yeah, California is getting more cucked by the moment. It's
at an alarming rate. But I mean, I think, Fujimori is one of my favorite examples of this. They had a real problem with terrorism. I think it was left-wing terrorism in Peru in the 90s. And he did some things that, went against human rights and all that shit. But he put together death squads.
A la Pinochet.
Yeah. And these death squads were so efficient at what they did that they scared off the Shining Path, is what they were called. I think they were a Vietnamese communist group.
Vietnamese, that makes sense.
But yeah, they were so good at what they did. I mean, they hunted these people like animals, the way that they should be. And within 4 years of this, they were gone. Never had another car bombing by them. Never had another mass shooting, nothing like that. And I wonder why we didn't let McCarthy do what he had to do when he had the chance.
Exactly.
And I think, the Weather Underground should have been the first red flag where, hey, why aren't these people being executed for being treasonous bastards?
For sedition.
And Bill Ayers was free to walk in a few years.
He's a college professor, for Pete's sake.
Yeah.
He's allowed to instruct our our succeeding generations of students. Yeah. He's allowed free pass.
And that's what gets to me is, see, Fujimori caught flack for what he did. I think he's in jail now if he's not already dead. But he took care of the problem at hand. And he got his economy kickstarted again. And people started feeling safe again. And he did the one thing that you have to do with radicalized commies, or commies in general. You take them out. You scare the rest of them off because they're spineless. And when you do that, like Pinochet showed, they don't come back. They're scared, and a lot of them will see the light and come back to reality. But I don't think we have that opportunity in the U.S., especially, our Constitution would never allow it.
No.
The people generally wouldn't allow it.
No.
And the Fed has just gotten so big, it's futile to even try to fight it, or even to have a coup d'etat or coup de force, anything.
Coup d'etat wouldn't work.
Yeah,
It would have to be planned from the inside, and as we've seen, the inside is so loyal and so cucked that there's no way in hell.
Yeah, so, I mean, basically what we're seeing right now is just the slow collapse. And I think what's going to be a surprise to a lot of these communists is that a lot of these, gun-toting, right-wing lunatics that they think they're dealing with, they're gonna see that that the country's going down, and yeah, they're gonna do their own little purge of them before they get to see their little utopia or dystopia.
There's a reason why the Second Amendment mentions militias.
Yeah, and I just, I don't know. I just really hate communists.
I'm just behind you on that. I don't like the idea of murdering them, but again, I have to wonder: is there any situation other than Pinochet possible? I don't know. And as someone who tries to have some faith in humanity, especially being a Christian, I've seen the hardest of hearts change. Communism is a very weird one for me. I don't know if it can ever be dealt with peacefully, because they've demonstrated that they won't go peacefully. It's like Islam. Same thing. I'll deal with people on an individual basis, but but if any mass group of them start coming after me, put a bullet in them. Not because I want to, but because I want to preserve my future, my posterity, and my country.
Well, I mean, it doesn't really count as murder since communists aren't really people. So.
Oh, I should have seen that joke coming. Okay, now for all you leftists, jerking it to how much fuel you think you got on us, Isaac, what are your thoughts on the alt-right? And to put it in perspective, the alt-right, you don't just get to label every new young conservative alt-right. What the alt-right is, and actually is it's a movement that it's a very decentralized movement that believes that traditional conservatism and civic nationalism has failed, and the only way to preserve Western culture is to destroy multiculturalism and at least socially, not legally, but at least socially attack multiracialism. For some of them. Obviously, most alt-righters are not white supremacists. Most of them, I dare say, are not even white separatists. But they exist to remind everyone of all the good stuff white people did, basically. And now that we have that definition out of the way, Milo is not alt-right.
Gay Jew can't be.
They don't like Jews. They don't like gays. They don't like what they call degenerates.
Yep.
Stefan Molyneux is considered alt-light because he doesn't believe in separatism, but he does, toy with race realism and whatnot. Now we have that definition out of the way. What do we do about the alt-right? And among their fringes, the neo-Nazi, or the anemic Ku Klux Klan, the usual straw man the left uses when talking about it. So I guess start with the alt-right itself, and then we can move on to the neo-Nazis and the Klan.
So the alt-right is, outside of memes, they're basically disliked by almost everyone. They have really no power. I do sympathize with some of their causes. They think traditional conservatism has failed them, and it has.
Oh, it has, exactly.
And I think that's definitely a point of theirs that I can sympathize with. I do think multiculturalism needs to be stamped out of our society, and I do think that nationalism needs to be it's paramount.
It needs to reign on high.
Yes. But outside of, their Harambes, their Pepes, their Nazi memes that make everybody laugh, they're just not very useful, because they go from the things that I think are really reasonable to off the deep end, gas all the Jews, and gays have to go too, and we need to have separatism. Some of them believe that, and then some of them believe that we just can't have interracialism at all. And I think most of us wouldn't be here if that were the case. But I don't think they have much sympathy in the mainstream, or even in anti-normie culture. They don't really have a lot of pockets of strength. They're just kind of dead fish right now. I mean, they make funny ass jokes sometimes, but generally they are kind of laughed at, and they're kind of just berated for their ideas on race. I don't know if the SJWs don't discontinue their belief in a racial hierarchy, and white people will need to fucking die, like that professor just said yesterday or something.
Yeah.
If they don't stop with that, the alt-right's gonna catch some steam.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I don't see alt-right as like right-wing SJWs. I really don't. I see the alt-right as the only inevitable result of the left's identity politics. When people eventually get tired of being called racist and sexist just for being man and women, or being man and being white. Not even kidding. They don't have to do a single damn other thing. That they're gonna say, you know what, Fungar your mother. I'm gonna go be loud and proud white. I'm gonna celebrate my heritage, my culture, my accomplishments, and if you get to have your collectivism, well, I damn well deserve my collectivism. I think it was the only inevitable knee-jerk to the social justice left. That being said, again, I sympathize with much of what they say. They seem to know what the problem is more than most people do, but I don't agree on their proposed solutions. And this is coming from someone who actually likes white people better. Just saying. Just saying. I like white people more. I don't know. I've met people I've liked and disliked from all races, so I'm an equal offender. Don't worry. It's like it's like my grandpa says. I'm not prejudiced. I just hate them all. But yeah, in and of itself, I don't think that the alt-right is necessarily all that useful. I think that they're, in a way, perpetuating the problem.
Yeah.
Because, well, you don't fight identity politics with identity politics, because the cycle never ends. Again, either everyone plays by different rules or everyone plays by the same rules.
Well, I think what's interesting is the left will always say, oh, white supremacy, we're built on white supremacy, our system is white supremacy. Well, if we're white supremacy through and through, why is the alt-right not the most popular thing in the world?
It should be, in theory.
Yeah.
It advocates for the return of the glorious age of the white race.
And why are they pathetically dwarfed by the SJWs in power?
Oh, yeah.
And it just kind of shows that.
And again, the SJWs are accepted by the mainstream left. The alt-right has no mainstream acceptance whatsoever. And the only people that the alt-right is sort of accepted by are like the neo-Nazis. But the alt-right doesn't even like the neo-Nazis.
Yeah. Nope. And I don't know, man. It's very strange that we live in a country where the majority is beholden to the minority.
Yeah,
and I think that goes for most of the West, with the exception of like Poland and Hungary.
East Europe, Romania, where they don't give a crap about political correctness. They give you the middle finger and say, "No, I don't care about your feelings. Go to hell." No, I sympathize with them, and in many ways, I do wish people would understand that white people did make all the good stuff. They kind of did. Just saying. But yeah, what irritates me is that they have one of the problems that the social justice warriors have, is that they seem incapable of separating race from culture, and that's because of race realism. And I've been interested in reading up on it just so I can see its precepts, but I don't know. Speaking of race, the neo-Nazis, you've told me some interesting things about them.
Yes.
Do tell, if I'm not much mistaken, you've known some in your travels.
Yes. Oh, I'm actually still friends with a few. So, oh shit. Yeah, they're an interesting bunch. The true, I guess, card-carrying neo-Nazis are definitely socialists, and socialism is left-wing. So, at the very least, economically, they're left-wing. And a lot of them aren't even, white supremacists. They're just separatists. They don't believe in multiracialism because they're race realists. Mm-hmm. They say, look, there's a huge problem when these two demographics interact in mass, and on an individual basis, sure, maybe we get along a little bit, but our 67% or 70%, whatever it is now, and their 13% do not get along, and they attack us a lot more than we attack them, and so we need to have our own land, they need to have their own land, and just separate. And what's very interesting about them is they go from white to Hispanic to even like dark South American. I don't know. I just don't see Hispanic the same. Like our Hispanic is basically Mexican.
Mestizo, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, his Hispanic is not even a race. It's a multiracial. We're mutts.
Yeah. Well, to word it better, I guess they go from really light to really dark. And the way they justify this is they'll show me clips of different Nazi divisions in World War II that were from Spain, from France, from
North Africa.
Yeah, North Africa and
Arab Nazis.
Yes, and they're like, see, it's always been this way. I think it's definitely important to point out Hitler was a big fan of Islam, big fan, and people that ignore that, you say look no further than the ANP and the NOI, the American Nazi Party and the Nation of Islam, where Malcolm X and George Lincoln Rockwell collaborated, and Malcolm X also collaborated with the KKK in Georgia.
Really?
Yeah, they all had the what all three of these groups have in common is they don't like Jews. And because they don't like Jews so much, they decided, hey, they're the reason why we're fighting each other. If we can just get rid of them, then we can work on whatever. And so they worked on trying to separate the races, and of course it didn't really succeed, but
no, the American Nazi Party never took off. The Nation of Islam is still very cliquish. The Klan is anemic and barely existent these days.
Yeah, but I mean, it is important to point out that these supremacist organizations and these separatist organizations, they go hand in hand. Farrakhan, I'm pretty sure if there was another American Nazi Party, he'd probably get along with them too. Elijah Muhammad was the one that was coaxing Malcolm X into talking to them in the first place. And
it's very interesting too, because Isaac showed me a historical photograph of George Lincoln Rockwell and some other American Nazi Party members sitting at a giant Nation of Islam rally. Now, again, when we think Nazi, we think racist. It's like, no, the Nazis were not necessarily all racists, and the neo-Nazis especially, most of them aren't racist either. They're separatists.
Yeah.
And the reason why Malcolm X and George Lincoln Rockwell got along so well was because, again, they felt, you know what, individually we get along, but en masse we don't.
Yeah.
So let's give everyone their own countries.
yeah, and I think that's what blows people's minds when they're like, oh, these neo-Nazis. I'm like, well, actually, I know a couple. They're like,
And they're not right-wing.
yeah, they're like, what? And, and I go into it, and they leave in disbelief, and I'm just like, well, fuck. Now they think I'm a racist.
I mean, for Pete's sake, Nazi means National Socialism. It's just that instead of class warfare, they believe that socialism works with monolithic demographic makeup.
Yeah, well, as far as most of Europe has proved so far, it does.
And again, this is why I have some sympathies with the alt-right, but I ultimately don't agree with their solution.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, we'll end the serious stuff with this loaded question. I know you'd alluded to this before, and this is always an interesting conversation I have in and of itself with other people I know. With the radical left now in full violent force all over the Western world, and the continued failure of cultural libertarian ideals to take root in the West, what do you think is the ultimate fate of Western civilization? Can we save ourselves? Will Europe and America fall and be forced to reform in the fires of civil war?
If we're lucky, we'll have a civil war. Um, I think that although we need to remain principled, the fact that we're saying, can we save the West, is already a tacit admittance of defeat. Because we're starting this fight on the back foot.
Yeah.
I think that whoever is more brutal in their tactics, whoever's more dishonest in their tactics, is going to win. And right now, that is the radical left. They're radicals, after all. They're the ones out in the streets. That the alt-right, maybe you'll catch a couple of them at a rally, maybe. Most of them are just shit posters that they don't really care. But right now, it's just looking like every day we're losing ground.
At least in the sense of civility in politics.
Yeah. And
culturally, I think we're shifting right, but pretty far right, considering that Generation Z is now the most conservative generation since the silent generation, which fought World War II for Pete's sake. But yeah, what's troubling is that it seems that while society's shifting rightward, away from social justice, it's also becoming more violent.
Yeah. And even though the right wing is known for having the weapons and all that, the feds, the military, is controlled by mostly globalists. So I think, even if it does come to blows where right-wingers are just blasting Antifa and blasting social justice warriors and blasting campus extremists, literally blasting them with guns, that is a dream for the federal government. Because, hey, we can kill two birds with one stone now. We take away everyone's rights. You guys obviously had too much freedom, so we needed to dial it back. And once you lose civil liberties, they never come back.
Not without another violent revolution, and God knows how long those take to form again.
Yeah, and I think everyone's gotten too comfortable to fight. Every poor person has a fridge. Most of them have a car. They have cell phones. Their life is too comfortable for there to be a real revolution. There's not really that many people starving. We don't really have anybody that's diseased and walking in the streets. That's not a common thing. If
we don't see the income and life disparities that you would see in a Christmas Carol, where you got people starving and disease ridden on the streets, and then the patricians just enjoying a rich, bourgeoisie life.
Yeah, and if social entitlement programs, social welfare programs weren't so big, and people were meant to fend for themselves, and they were still failing in large numbers, if the 26% of people on welfare, if that 26% were made to suffer, just suffer, starve, your family's out on the streets, there's nowhere to go but up for you, there would be talks of revolution all over the place. But there's not. And that's because I think in the U.S. we don't know poverty the way the rest of the world knows it, or at least in the West. It's not, oh shit, today's do or die. It's, do I really want to go fight in the revolt? It's not that bad.
Making ends meet in the first world is not anywhere close to the same thing as making ends meet in the third world, or even the second world.
Yeah, at my old apartment, the worst it got was, fuck, man, I only have crackers, and, I have some cheese. I don't really like cheese, but I need calories, so I'm gonna eat the cheese with the crackers.
Cheese and crackers. That's a better
Yeah.
meal than most people in the world get.
Yeah, well, we also have this belief of relative poverty rather than absolute. But
Yeah.
as an example, and it's like, well, I can still get water out of my sink. I can still,
We have water, for Pete's sake.
yeah, and it's just like I'm not really that hungry. I'm not thirsty at all. Like, I sleep in my bed, and the lights are still on, and like I can go to the bathroom and flush the toilet. I can shower. Yeah, making rent might be a little tough this week, but I'm not really too hard pressed. Now, if it was like 2 full years of eating cheese and crackers, and like my lights shut off halfway through the year, and like my water wasn't paid anymore, and like I was just like fucked. Maybe I'd become radicalized. I'd be like, hey, this system is fucked, man. Like, we need to fight. But the people that want the revolution are the ones that are being told this is our reality, and by our reality I mean brown and black people. They're being told that this is brown and black people's reality. They're starving out in the streets. They're this, they're that, they're this, and these white bourgeois kids are like, oh fuck, we got to do something. And so this is what they think is right, Antifa, and I think a revolution to stop Marxism is not going to happen because people are too comfortable. And even if we did, we'd lose miserably, and we'd also just lose all our rights. Anybody who survived really would just lose all their rights after that.
In the current state that this all is.
Yeah. I think that's what they're hoping for. They're hoping that Antifa pushes someone on the right way too far. That person goes on a shooting spree in a crowded area, and then you just see the rights of people start going. The liberties just gone, one by one by one.
It's a grim picture.
I mean, this is just some of my ideas,
if things don't change, that is.
Yeah, but I think that we'll die a very slow death, because, like I said, people are too comfortable to fight back. Shit, I'm too comfortable to fight back. I wouldn't really want to risk the life that I have right now, especially after getting stabbed, to fight again.
It would be a terrifying prospect. I mean, I'm armed, but again, that doesn't mean that I necessarily wouldn't kick and scream the whole way.
Yeah.
to being driven to my militia.
Yeah.
Oh man. Wow. So let's talk about lighter stuff. Just to finish off.
Yeah.
Finish off. Keep this personal. I don't know. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Favorite music taste in movies, shows, internet stuff.
All right. So, I guess I'll just list off some of my favorite bands. Black Marble is definitely up there. I'm gonna go see them in 2 weeks. Yeah, then I have to drive to a wedding 10 hours away immediately after.
Oh, dang.
So I'm gonna be up from probably 6 a.m. to noon the next day, and then have a 2-hour nap, and then go to the wedding. Yeah, but they're like a post-punk synth kind of deal. Joy Division might be something that makes you think of them, or you might think of Joy Division once you listen to them. Chastity Belt, I know that they're like a huge feminist band, but yeah, I really like them. I saw them a few weeks ago over here at Bowie Feathers before they changed it to The Purge for some reason. And their new album just released like 2 days ago or 3 days ago. It's awesome. And Billy Changer's another one. Grave Babies, they finally released a single that might make me forget about their shitty third album. Oh god, that thing was terrible. Yeah, what'd you say? Movies? Was it?
Yeah. Well, you said the genre of all of these music. It was like sort of punkish.
Oh yeah, post. Chastity Belt is like post punk and um, fuck. I'm very slow on my subgenres now. Generally, they're post punk, and then Grave Babies is goth. And then Billy Changer is like rockabilly and goth kind of put together. And yeah, he's a really interesting guy. And then did I say anybody else? I think that was it.
I think it was mainly those.
Yeah.
I don't know, tastes in movies and TV shows. Your favorite genres.
So I really like kind of out of the ordinary movies. I really do like something like a what's the word for somebody who's a neurotic character. I really like those.
Hannibal.
Uh,
Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, like Buffalo '66. That's probably my favorite movie of all time. I actually messaged the director. He is a huge right winger. Yeah, Vincent Gallo. I tried to get him for Bridge the Divide, and he actually replied to my email. And I honestly didn't think he would because that email is like 12 years old, and I was like, well, let's just take a shot in the dark. And he was like, hey, thanks for the message. That was really nice of you. But sadly, like, I don't do any, or unfortunately, I didn't do any, like, interviews for any reason. I was like, fuck. Like, I should have offered him a part in a fake movie or something just to get him over here. I mean, he would have been pissed and everything, but it would have been cool to see him. Yeah, like, if you know who he is or you don't know who he is, check out his website. I think it's just vincentgallo.net or something. It's fucking hilarious. He was, like, one of the first right-wing trolls back in the 90s. Like, he was awesome. Yeah, The Lobster is another good one. Let me think. The Green Room, I really like that one. And Drive. Let me think. Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of movies. The more believable the dialogue, the better. I don't really like movies with prophetic dialogue, just like I don't like novels with prophetic dialogue. I'm like, nobody talks like that. Go fuck yourself. You know, just, I guess in that way, and forgive me, capitalists, I do like Hemingway in that sense. But yeah, then there's, what do you call it? What was the other one we talked about?
Oh, just movies, TV shows, Netflix shows, online shows, YouTube tastes.
Oh, okay. TV shows, because I don't have cable anymore, like...
It's okay, man. I use Netflix and the internet.
Well, I was a really big fan of The Nick with Clive Owen. I really like Clive Owen. And that one's about... a surgeon in like the 20s, I think. He works at the Knickerbocker in New York, and he's kind of unhinged, and he's a cocaine addict, and then he gets onto heroin in the second season, and then that's where my knowledge of the show just drops off. Silicon Valley, I fucking love that show. I mean, it's a bunch of liberals, but they're actually funny. Like, they're actually funny liberals, so it's not too bad. So it's one thing to have like a show written by liberals. It's another thing to have them like pressing their bullshit on you. Orange is the New Black is probably the worst offender of that I've ever seen.
I hear it's nothing but a bunch of.
It's social justice porn.
I was gonna say it's nothing but a bunch of lesbian orgies, is what I hear.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Which sucks considering the fact that one of the characters, played by How did I forget her name? I'm ashamed of Star Trek. Kate Mulgrew. She played Captain Catherine Janeway from Star Trek Voyager. Dude, Captain Janeway is a boss. But like apparently, like this is like her next really huge role, and then to hear that the show is just a bunch of lesbian smut.
Yeah, no, it's just social justice porn. I actually might start doing a video series just tanking these things because, dude, it's bad. I mean, it's blatant. It's not even like, oh, that's a funny joke. It was just like, Jesus Christ, did you just read Salon? Like what was this? And
go leave your HuffPo wet dreams somewhere else, please.
Yeah, and I mean, oh god, I only saw a couple episodes, but I was just like, Jesus. And then The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
My sister has actually watched that. She says it's actually really interesting.
The first season is funny. The second and third season, I think it's second and third season, just go into social justice 101.
Really?
Like, yeah, and it's just
I had hopes for the show after seeing the first episode.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's quirky, it's funny, the first season. And then after that, it's just like, it gets tiresome with the social justice points. Yeah, I really should do reviews of these things, because it seems harmless, and like, you know, people might get indoctrinated this way, where it's like, oh, well, this is oppression, and like, you know, these little talking points that aren't nuanced or anything. And they're not even really jokes. Like, they're not even cleverly masked jokes. It's just like, fuck Republicans. It's like, what? Are you kidding me?
Way to be subtle.
Yeah, and let me think. Yeah, and then on YouTube, big shout out to That Guy T. He was the first libertarian and anti-feminist that I ever watched. And, I mean, while I was still in my big-ass cast and shit, sleeping like 14 hours a day, I would watch his videos. And he really turned me onto the arguments that I've now, like, internalized and started to learn from. Like, hey, there's a different way of thinking. And, yeah, Matt Christensen definitely is another one. And Mouthy Buddha, Wild Smile, and the Neo Unrealist are some of my favorites right now.
Yeah, interesting tastes. I just wish I was able to keep up with more mainstream stuff. Yeah, I mean, here I am. I listen to classical music, video game music, and yes, that includes the chiptune 8-bit and 16-bit stuff. Not even kidding. I was a band geek. Sue me. I like music with no words. My tastes in music with words are all over. I have, occasional pop song, occasional country song, occasional rock song, occasional oldies.
Well, you know what? There's two bands I'd like to suggest, given your affinity for chiptune and for instrumentals. Those are Crying, just Crying. They're from New York. The guitarist, he uses a Game Boy and programmed it to play their music.
I've heard of bands who've done stuff like
this. He's
Steven Universe, and by the way, I'm wearing a Steven Universe shirt. Not even kidding. I'm in the red shirt with the star, and I'm wearing jeans and flip-flops. It's so, sorry, go on.
Yeah, well, there's that, and then Adebisi Shank. They came here a few years ago. I remember buying their second album. Very interesting bunch. There's 3 of them, and no vocals, just very interesting instrumentals. They would resemble Battles if Battles hadn't become what it is now. Battles is far more intricate, very sparse vocals. Interesting too.
Interesting. And as a final send-off, thank you, Isaac, for your time. I know this went on very long, and I don't intend future episodes to go on this long, but as the pilot, I guess it only makes sense. What political philosophy books would you most recommend for me to read to help me better understand sort of your worldview? I mean, I know we share almost everything in common. We're both conservatarians, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But as someone who's trying to get into more political, philosophy book, your Adam Smiths of the world, your Thomas Paines, or even your more contemporary stuff like Thomas Sowell and whatnot. What are a couple of really good books I should read?
First, you've got to go with Ayn Rand. I would say The Fountainhead.
The Fountainhead.
That's definitely one that opened me up to a lot of counter arguments, actually, where it was like, well, selfishness is actually a good thing, and it's probably the best thing you can do for yourself, and it's probably the best thing if you're a talented individual. It's probably the best thing you can do for your society is invest in yourself. And it also has a lot to do with like integrity and all kinds of other things, but that's definitely a big one for me. And then I would have to say Crime and Punishment is a huge, huge influence on me. I don't know. I just the I guess the ideas that go on in this novel, you really have to think about what hadn't happened yet when this was written, and then you have to pose that against Hitler's idea of the superhuman and the ramifications of these ideas in both the novel and in how they played out in real life. And maybe 1919 by Dos Passos. He was a commie, like a filthy commie at the time, and so you can kind of see how they think in this. Of course, he grew a brain and said no, fuck communism at some point during his life. But yeah, when you read this, and there's actually some things that make me think he hadn't completely drank the Kool-Aid at that point.
He was still at a point where he could be taught.
Yes, and yeah, he was very critical of Churchill. I mean, not Churchill. Of who was our guy during World War One? Was that? I'm ashamed.
Wilson. There you go. Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah.
Arguably one of the most, if not the most, progressive president in American history.
Yeah. Well, he was critical of him, and a lot of what he was saying in there was, hey, we fought this big war, we sacrificed a whole bunch of our country for it. Well, why did we not get more out of the deal? And so at that point, I'm thinking, that sounds like something a capitalist would say. You know, like, we put in the resources, we did the most work, how come our labor did not produce fruits? Or it did produce fruits, we just didn't get any of them. You're shitty negotiators. And so, yeah, I think looking inside the mind of a communist is definitely something that I think most capitalists, or every capitalist, needs to do. Because you need to see how they think in order to understand how to argue against them. Because if you always go in with, oh, my ideas are obviously the best because, I mean, they're axiomatic.
Yeah, because they're common sense, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if you always go in doing that, you're not going to convince many people. And I think that's why a lot of teachers, a lot of leftist teachers go into teaching young children and impressionable people because they can't argue on their own merits. I mean, how many times have we seen Ben Shapiro just annihilate a doctor, you know? And it just makes sense to me. Like, if you go in thinking my ideas are the best, nobody else can match up to them, you're just not going to convince anybody. You're not going to grow, and you're never going to understand the other side, so you'll never find a solution. And that's the thing with communists. You have to get them when they're like 19, 20. Because if you go with them at 18 when they've just freshly been indoctrinated, it's a nightmare. It's a goddamn nightmare.
Well, as the old saying goes, if you're not a leftist by the time you're 20, you're heartless. But if you ain't a conservative by the time you're 40, you're just plain stupid. I guess that means that I was a heartless 20-year-old, or smart. I like how Ape and Kraut put it best. That it seems that the appeals that the left and the right use. The left says, "Oh, I'm the good guy."
Yeah.
The right says, "I'm the smart guy."
Yeah.
So, well, Isaac, thank you very much for your time, and I hope this was informative to all audiences out there. And again, I know this went on kind of long. I intend for my future conversations to be more concise, but I figured that it was only fitting that my friend and colleague here be the first guest.